Hi guys, today we are going to be focusing on 4.2 and 4.3. So our do now is on 4.2. We just want to brush up on some things that we learned last year, and then we're going to move on to the fun stuff. So 4.2 is identifying and writing proportions. Some vocabulary words that you guys need to know are equivalent ratios, the ratios that name the same comparison. That means that if you have a ratio, a comparison of two things, then you might need to find an equivalent one, and you might need to multiply or divide. A proportion, you guys heard this before as well, is an equation that states that two ratios are equivalent. And we kind of talked about that on Tuesday, where we talked about, well, if we travel a certain amount of miles in 6 hours, how many would we travel in 12 hours? Okay, that is an equivalent ratio, also a proportion. So if we want to determine if the ratios are proportional, there are several ways of doing this. The first way is we could write all our fractions in simplest form and see if they are equal. So obviously 2/7 is already in simplest form, so we just have to leave it. But we might be able to simplify 6/21 and see if that is going to equal the same thing. So we can divide. I know that 6 and 21 are both divisible by 3. So 6 divided by 3 gives us that 2. And 21 divided by 3 gives us that 7. In that case, these fractions, they are equivalent. So these ratios are equivalent as well and proportional. Okay, so another method of seeing if two ratios are proportional is by cross-multiplying, or you may know this as the butterfly method. The key is to go diagonally across and multiply the two numbers. I like to do my antenna, and we always go up with our antennas. So 24 times 6, we get 144. 6 times 20, 120. 6 times 4, 24, and add them together. And 8 times 20 is 160. Well, 160 is not the same thing as 144, so that means that these two ratios are not proportional. So 8/24 does not equal 6/20. And the equal sign with the slash is just not equal, which means that they are not proportional either. Okay, sometimes we may need to find an equivalent ratio, which is what I talked about when I introduced the vocabulary. And what we do, it's really simple. You can choose a number, and sometimes you'll get that number if we are dealing with word problems or problem solving. We may get that number given to us, but normally if it's up to you, you could choose any number you like. I like to stay kind of simple, 2, 3, sometimes even 10 perhaps. You can multiply the numerator and the denominator by the same number and then write that proportion. So let's, like I said, simple. I'm going to do times 2 on both numerator and denominator. 8 times 2, I get 16. 14 times 2, I get 28. And if you don't trust me, you could go ahead and check it out by putting them next to each other and doing the butterfly method. So 14 times 16, we get 224. And 28 times 8, we also get 224. They're equal, yay! I'm ready for spring with that butterfly. You can also obviously divide as well, and it will still be equivalent. It's usually easier for us to multiply though. Okay, one more. An equivalent ratio for this, again, we can multiply the numerator and the denominator by the same number. I'm going to use something really simple. I'm going to use 10. I just chose it. I like the number 10, and I know that all I have to do is 10 is add a 0 at the end, so 40 over 180. Yay! So these two are equivalent ratios. Very cool. Okay, so I have my, as you can see in the directions, it said find an equivalent ratio and write a proportion. So 40 over 180 was my equivalent ratio. But this right here, this is my proportion. Us showing that the two are equal to one another. That's a proportion. A proportion is two fractions where you're able to do that butterfly method. A ratio is just one single fraction where you're comparing two things. All right, it is time for your real do now. On the bottom of this form, you guys should have some problems to do and then submit.